Hello and welcome to Larry Has Opinions. The other day I was watching two really insightful videos. The first one from Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, who were interviewing different booktubers who were sharing their perspectives on how they review books, what sort of language they employ, whether they take more of a emotional or more objective point of view when they rate them, and so on. And the other one from the always engaging Philip Chase, who was sharing his thoughts on why he doesn't like star ratings and what sort of themes he looks at when he reviews books. So I would really recommend you guys go watch both of those because they were incredibly interesting. But also it got me thinking a little bit, and I just thought I would share my thoughts on how I review books, what sort of ratings I employ, and why I do like star ratings and why I'll keep using them. But just more generally, what sort of things I like to look at when I review books. So first of all, I really want to premise that the perspective that I take in this channel is that of an average person on the street that likes to read, but no more. I don't have an English degree or a PhD. I don't teach. I do nothing of the sort. So I have no pretense to be able to judge the quality of a book from a professional perspective like you can get on a newspaper, or for instance in some of the other booktube channels where you have people like Philip Chase himself, but a lot of other people as well who have a really strong background in having studied literature and so on. From my perspective, it's purely someone who likes to read as a hobby, and I just want to share what my opinions are. And when I talk about a book, it's not from the perspective of someone who's judging the quality of the book, but purely on whether I enjoy the book as an average reader and no more. English is not even my native language, so I think it'd be even more difficult for someone whose native language is not the same as the book they're reading to be able to objectively assess the quality of the prose or the writing. Again, I'm really happy to share what my opinions are, but not necessarily be able to pretend that I'm some sort of objective judge of quality of work of literature. If objective reviews even exist in the first place, which is a pretty contentious issue, and I think it tends to be settled on the side of agreeing that all reviews are subjective, but even more so when they come from someone like me who's just a non-professional reviewer. So the key metric that I always want to share when I talk about a book in the channel is my level of enjoyment of a book. And I'm very aware that some people, like for instance Scott in his video, he was saying how he doesn't care about whether the booktuber enjoy the book or not. He cares about whether he's going to enjoy the book, which is an absolutely fair point. But from my perspective, all I can share is whether I liked it or not. What I can try to do, and sometimes maybe more successfully than other times, I don't know, not for me to judge, but is to try and elaborate on the reasons why I liked a book or not. And I guess over time, as you follow specific booktubers, you get a better sense of what their taste is like and whether your own taste aligns with theirs. But what I always kind of try to do to the best of my abilities is to kind of break down the reasons why I enjoyed a book or not. And I know that some people, for instance, look at like characters, plot, themes, that sort of thing, and then they assess individually each of those and sometimes even rate each element of the book and then kind of work out an average to give a final rating or just a final judgment. Whereas for me, like, it's purely my gut feeling about the book, my gut reaction of whether I like the book or not. And sometimes it's very clear what areas of the book shine through the most. Is it because of really strong character works or characters you can relate to, or a really engaging plot, or other key themes that perhaps are reflected in today's society, or they make you think about other things in life, or whatever it may be. Sometimes it's very clear cut what of those elements are the strongest. And again, what I can try to do is to explain which of those elements struck me the most. But sometimes it's just a generic appreciation for a book where you just find yourself incredibly invested in the story or the characters or whatever it may be, and you can very much tell that it might not be the best book of the world, but still, if you enjoy it, I'm gonna talk about it in glowing terms in the channel. And that is why I'm very comfortable with the notion of star ratings, because different star ratings for me don't necessarily imply a judgment on the quality of a book or on whether other people, other readers will enjoy the book or not. It's purely a reflection of my own subjective enjoyment of the story, of the plot, of the character, whatever it may be. And that is pretty clear cut from my subjective perspective. So one of the points that Philip was making was that star ratings can be a very crude measure of a book. What's a 3-star book, a 4-star book? What does that mean? And he was making the point that he would rather just elaborate on the themes that the book is touching and break down all the different elements that make the book, and that would be a lot more interesting. My main rebuttal for that is that one thing should not exclude the other. I think you can still break down all the elements that make a book great or that did not work for you, but still give a more consistent metric at the end of your review for how much you actually enjoy the book. Because, for instance, sometimes I might rate a book really highly, but during the review, I might have highlighted a few things that I didn't like or didn't appreciate, but I still really love the book despite those elements. And for me, without giving that final metric, that final number, it becomes a bit more difficult to tell whether the booktuber, and obviously I follow booktubers who give ratings and others who don't, but I quite like to get a sense for how much they enjoy the book, even though they might have broken it down into all these elements and highlighted things that worked or didn't work in each of those. And also to whoever might say that, oh, but how can you rate things that are very different in nature, very different types of books? They might be quite tricky to put on the same scale. And my response to that is just that the scale measures my own enjoyment, and I know how much I've enjoyed the book, even if the books are completely different. So I might have something like The Promise, that is 5 stars for me, and A Song of Ice and Fire, and The Da Vinci Code. These are all 5 stars for me, and they're incredibly different types of book. And that doesn't mean that I want to compare them, but I'm just saying that all of these, for some reason that might be completely different between them, I really incredibly enjoyed. By the way, I'm absolutely not having a go at booktubers or reviewers who do not give out star ratings. A lot of the people that I follow and whose reviews I massively enjoy do not do it. I'm just saying that for myself, I really like having this more consistent, it's not really a ranking per se, because these categories are so broad, but definitely you have tiers of books that really resonate with you and stay with you for a long time, and other books that you find more forgettable. And that's where the star ratings kind of reflect that for me. So now I want to talk about what the ratings mean for me. So for instance, a 5-star book for me is a book that I really loved and really resonated with me, and it's probably going to stay with me for a long time, like an all-time favorite. And I'm fairly stingy with my 5-star ratings as well. That doesn't mean that the book is perfect, because sometimes I might really enjoy a book despite its flaws. So again, because the rating purely reflects my enjoyment, it doesn't mean that I can't see its shortcomings. For instance, A Little Life for me was a 5-star book because I cried so much, and that's very rare for me. That's not the only reason. Like, I really enjoyed the story, but I usually have a really low tolerance for overly long books that are longer than they need to be. And you could argue easily that A Little Life could be 200 pages shorter and possibly be a better book. But that was still a 5-star book for me, even despite that issue, for instance, that I had with it. A 9 out of 10 or a 4.5-star book for me is something that still really stood out of the average book that I might read. It could be like a favorite for that year, for instance, but not necessarily an all-time favorite. A 4-star rating or 8 out of 10 for me tends to be a bit of a default rating, because I don't pick just random books to read. In that case, it's quite likely that my default rating might be more 2.5 stars, something like that, because I tend to pick books that I'm more likely to enjoy. I find that 4 stars tends to be more of a almost average rating. So a book that I quite enjoy, quite appreciate, a lot of things work for me, but don't necessarily, a book that doesn't necessarily become a favorite or a book that I'm gonna remember for a very long time, but a book that really worked for me overall would be a 4 stars. And then 3.5 is just a step under that. So a book that I still enjoyed, but where there were several elements that were a bit underwhelming for me, and therefore it didn't quite resonate as much as I was hoping for. 3 stars or 6 out of 10. I know for a lot of people, they will still say it's a book they liked. For me, it's definitely a book that I found really underwhelming. And going down to 2.5 stars or 5 out of 10, even more so, a book where perhaps I had high expectations, but still left me incredibly underwhelmed. A book that I'm very unlikely to reread. A book that I'm usually unlikely to recommend, but sometimes I can see that it might work for other readers. So again, it's not necessarily that a book didn't work for me. I would necessarily say it would not work for other people, or that it's a bad book. It's just a book that didn't really work for me, like Clara and the Sun. 2 stars or 4 out of 10 tends to be in most cases the lowest rating that I give, and it's a book that I actively disliked. There was something about the book where I really hated. Quite likely I would have DNF'd. Perhaps the book wasn't too long, so I kept going. But it's that sort of territory where I'm really hating the book so much that I would either DNF it or it really annoyed me to a large extent. And then 1 star, which I very, very, very rarely give, as a book that probably I think should not have been published, like The Secret. I hope you guys like this video. Please let me know what you think about this subject. Do you like star ratings? Would you rather booktubers did not give star ratings? Do you keep them in your Goodreads account? And what sort of reviews do you enjoy? More objective ones, if objective reviews do exist, probably not, or just a purely emotional response from reviewers. So just let me know your thoughts. Join our Discord if you want to talk about this topic or any other topic further, and I'll see you the next time.